Welcome to the Dragon's Library, your source for games, movies, shows, and more. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. So today, we are reviewing Thor, Love and Thunder. So as you might know, this is the fourth Thor movie, which is really interesting. It's basically the first time we've gotten like a fourth movie from one of the core Avengers, I believe. All the others basically just got three. And that's because Chris Hemsworth decided to stick around a bit more. And yeah, it's pretty good. Not as good as Ragnarok. I think Ragnarok is better. But this is pretty good, so let's get into it. So, moving in here, what's the plot? Our story starts out on this desolate alien world with a father and his daughter. This is Gor, who's going to be the main villain of this movie. Essentially, his entire planet is facing a massive drought/catastrophe, and the gods they worship have essentially vanished. He is a deity of like the sun god, and he constantly is asking him for rain and to, relieve them of the sun's damaging rays. However, no help comes, and his daughter dies. Gor, near mad at this point, and basically essentially dying of dehydration, finds an oasis like a day or so after nearly giving up on life, and finds his god there, relaxing and insulting him and calling him a savage little beast. And as he begs the god, why weren't you there? Why weren't you there? The god's like, oh, we have to deal with this guy. See, this is the God Butcher. He has this evil sword, the Necro sword. All black, the Necro sword. We knew he was coming to this planet, so we had to devote all of our power to saving ourselves, of course. And Gor is just staring like, what about your people? It's like, oh, there are plenty of you worms. And Gor gets really upset at him. And the Necro sword, which is essentially alive, comes over to him and is like, you want to kill them? And so he kills the gods, and essentially he goes full on, all the gods are terrible, horrible creatures that exist only to torment lesser beings in their eyes. So he has essentially started on his quest to get revenge on all the gods. Meanwhile, Thor is hanging out with the Guardians, and they start getting reports that gods all over the universe are dropping dead all of a sudden. So, Thor, upon getting a message from Lady Sif, who, yes, fans, is still alive. Anyone who's wondering about, hey, what about, like, the only one of Thor's friends who had, like, any personality and wasn't killed by Hela? Yep, it's canon now. She survived. Isn't that cool? And she's like, Thor, we need your help. And so Thor immediately goes and says, hey, guys, I'm gonna head out there. You guys take the rest of the universe. I'm gonna handle the, this one right here, and we're gonna try and stop this God Butcher guy. You guys go deal with the devastation. And the Guardians are just like, finally, we can get rid of him. Because Thor's a little obnoxious at this point. I mean, he's a god, and he's definitely going back to some of his older, arrogant ways, which he needs to be taken down a notch on. I mean, he did just kill Thanos, so I guess he's still riding high. He's also a little depressed. Meanwhile, we are also cut to Dr. Jane Foster, who has cancer now, because this is based on the Mighty Thor comics. She's looking for a treatment for her cancer and hears this calling to Mjolnir, goes to investigate. Essentially, she becomes Thor, because that's already been spoiled. I'm not going to try and hide that. And Thor, Jane Foster, and Valkyrie, who's leading the human version of Asgard, now need to stop Gor the God Butcher from trying to slaughter all the gods in the universe. That's basically the plot. It's pretty simple, but there's a lot of intricacies to it that I actually am a little impressed by. So, one of the things I really liked is that both Jane and Thor seem to get almost equal billing in this. They both get introductory cuts. They both get regular moments to themselves. They both have good chemistry on this whole. It really does look like they're trying to fix a lot of the problems that came up in Thor the Dark World, where she was basically sidelined as a MacGuffin and love interest, and really correct that and giving her her own arc, her own problems, her own things, somewhat separate from Thor as a character. She's trying to deal with cancer. That's her problem. And she specifically doesn't want to deal with Thor because, they're exes. They have a complicated relationship at this point, and they haven't seen each other in like 8 years. So yeah. We do get a cameo by Darcy, too. So let's get into the actors. That brings us over there. So we got Chris Hemsworth as Thor, and ever since Ragnarok, this guy has just been a blast. Like, seriously, he's so much fun. He has this kind of pompous energy to him in this one in particular, and I just love it. Meanwhile, we got Christian Bale as Gor the God Butcher. He has a remarkably creepy presence in this movie. Very good, very great. Love it. I honestly think Gor is one of the better villains they could have used for a Thor movie. The whole, I think gods are capricious assholes who would rather watch the entire world burn and just rebuild it later than do anything to help people, confronting a Norse god who has turned into a literal superhero is actually an interesting philosophical argument. It's like, okay, so this guy believes most gods are assholes. And they are. But what happens when he meets a god who actually goes down and tries to help as many people as possible all the time? Thor isn't like the other gods. He doesn't just stick to his 1 or 2 worlds he visits. He goes to all these worlds. He's traveling with the Guardians. He's saving the universe from Thanos. He's an active participant as opposed to a lot of the other pantheons, which kind of just sit in the background, even compared to the rest of the Asgardians. And the Asgardians themselves present a certain problem to him. Unlike the other gods in their palaces or hidden grottos, the Asgardians are now living amongst humanity, you know? They're interacting with them, playing politics with them. They're giving tour guides about Asgardian culture. They're treating them like equals, which, although they don't really bring it up the Asgardian angle, they do bring up the Thor and Gor's, antithetical worldview situation. And I think it's interesting that Gor confronts the Asgardians at this point in the MCU, because if he had confronted them like Thor 1, sure, yeah, that's like Thor's only interest in the world was really his personal connection to Jane Foster. In Thor 1, both Thor and Asgard fit the exact mold that Gor hates. They abandoned humanity. They left them behind, and they just kind of pop in every once in a while, but they don't really care. And it wasn't until Thor started getting involved and after Ragnarok, when they lived on the planet, that they actually cared about that. So, yes, I went into a little rant about Gor, but I think it's interesting. Moving on from that, we got Tessa Thompson reprising her role as Valkyrie. She's the new king of Asgard, and she is just having a blast. So, she's fun. Like, I do feel like we didn't get enough of her in this movie. She's more of a side character. She does pop up a bit. She's still looking for someone. I got some vibes between her and Jane Foster, but they don't really play on it like I thought they would. Like, I thought they were going to have like a whole relationship with them, because apparently she's known about Jane being the new Thor, the mighty Thor, for a little while now, before, Thor himself comes back to Earth. And it's like, oh wait, there's a new Thor now. And I got a sense that there is a relationship there. There's she helps Jane hide her cancer because she doesn't want to worry about it during the mission. They seem very chummy. They have this whole, almost sisterly dynamic. And I would have wondered what's going on there, but, this movie is already jam-packed with, you got Gor setting up his backstory. He's a regular presence in the plot. You got the kids. You got Thor himself. You got a bit of the Guardians of the Galaxy. You've got Sif coming back. You've got Korg. There's a lot going on here. Moving on from there, we've got Jamie Alexander as Sif. And you know what? She does a good job. She only has a few lines here, but I like her presence. She was one of the best side characters in the early Thor movies, aside from Loki and Odin. So I think it's good that she managed to stick around. I'm happy for her. I hope she gets a bigger role. Hey, maybe she'll even get her own spin-off series eventually. In addition, we have Taika Waititi, the director, also playing Korg, which is really fun. He's a joy as always. He's, a lot of fun, has a lot of good laughs. He's sort of like the comedic heart of the movie. Taika Waititi does a great voice acting for him. It's always nice. I love his, what you doing, mate? Oh, we're just gonna go over here and, do this thing. Wanna go with us? Kind of soft-spoken comedy. I don't really know how else to describe it. Moving on from there, we got Russell Crowe as Zeus, who's a secondary antagonist in this movie, which is great. Yes, we do get to see Zeus's ass get kicked. And it is very satisfying. Seriously, I know some of you think of Zeus as sort of like a protagonist-y character. Any of you have A, read the Percy Jackson books, or B, read any mythology at all. Well, the Percy Jackson ones probably have this unflattering but generally heroic vibe. He's paranoid, but he's trying to do the right thing. And those of you who read mythology are like, yes, we cannot wait to see his ass get handed to him. Seriously, no character in all of mythology deserves to have his ass kicked more than Zeus. I'm just gonna say that. No other character. Ugh. Anyway, moving on from there, we have Natalie Portman. She's finally back as Jane Foster, the mighty Thor. She does a great job. I like how they differentiate her power set from Thor's original power set with the hammer. See, when Hela broke the hammer, the Asgardians found the pieces, and essentially, since they couldn't move it because none of them were Thor, they essentially scooped up the entire chunk of Earth and brought it there, and it sits like an altar. It's basically a museum piece at this point. And when she comes to it, it turns out that Thor had accidentally enchanted the hammer like Odin and said, "You gotta promise me, if anything happens to me, you'll take care of her." And so basically that combined with Odin's worthiness thing let her essentially take control of its shattered remains. And so, unlike the normal version where it's just a hammer, she can, yes, turn into a hammer again, it reforms, but it's still cracked and damaged. So a lot of her attacks involve throwing the hammer and watching it like blast apart into countless thundering shards, which are just really cool in general. We have the Guardians of the Galaxy showing up. All of them are fine. The scenes they're in, they're not really there that much. Literally all Nebula gets is like one line, a grunt. So, wish there had been more. We don't really know what happened to the new Gamora, though. Like, are the Guardians still chasing her? We don't really know what the deal is with that. But, all in all, it's fun. It's a lot of great. We do get a cameo from Hercules in the post-credit scene, which is cool. And we also see Heimdall in the very last scene. And I'm not going to talk about that because it involves Valhalla. I'll get there, okay? Now, that is basically it. So the effects are fantastic. The costumes look a little plasticky at times. Like, it's not too noticeable, and I kind of like the design they're going for with the cool armor looks. I don't know, there's just something a little off about the metal mask and Thor's, like, fancy getup he puts on midway through one of the battles to, like, show off his mask to Jane. It's okay. It's not amazing. The lightning effects are on point in this. Loving that. Also, all of Gor's stuff. Oh, I love the deliciously creepy shadow monsters. I'm sorry, I like that. In addition, one of the things I like about this is that the third act battle does have a CGI army, but they're almost in the background, and I really, really do like that. I think that's much better. The main focus is on Gor, Jane, and Thor, which is where it belongs. Great job doing that, Disney. You're not stopping your bad habits from making a CGI battle into every movie, but you are toning it down a bit, and I do like that. Also, there's not a sky beam. Instead, there's a wall beam. We're making progress. Baby steps, Disney. Baby steps. Hey, maybe next time you can just not have a CGI army, or you can not have a beam. Just no beam. Just have them be going for a MacGuffin. You don't have to be shooting a beam into something. You just have the MacGuffin there. It's a minor thing, but even me, who I've never really minded the big CGI battles at the end. I think they're fun. They're kind of celebratory. So what? It's a movie. Enjoy the movie. But I do admit it does detract a little bit, and I think a little bit more originality and a little less cookie-cutter template could be nice for the franchise to let it breathe a little bit more. Honestly, I would have preferred if you had just had them save the kids and not have them involved in the weird CGI battle in the background, and focused more time on the climax between Thor, Jane, and Gor the God Butcher. That would have been a more appropriate use of the time. That's my opinion. Moving on from effects, we have my final opinions. Is there anything really stands out about this film? Absolutely. The pantheons of all the gods and the weird cameos you get there was basically a dream for me. Like, when this comes out on DVD, I am grabbing a Blu-ray and replaying the Pantheon of the Gods scene like 1,000 times. I picked out Quetzalcoatl. I picked out several Greek gods. I picked out what I think might be a Roman variant. I think, like, there was Minerva instead of, Athena, and the way I was able to tell that is because she had some of her symbols, and I saw it was in the credits, it was Minerva, and I was like, wait, is that Minerva instead of Athena? Because Athena is like a war goddess, but Minerva was more of a goddess of arts and crafts. She wasn't as much associated with war in Rome, which was a little weird. But I do think it's really cool. So, all things said and done, yeah, this is a good movie. It's a Taika Waititi Thor movie. Is it as good as Ragnarok? No. I said this at the beginning. It's not as good as Ragnarok. You gotta understand, before Ragnarok, the Thor movies were kind of an afterthought. Ragnarok was a explosion of creative ideas and amazing things. And this movie is cool too. The Pantheon of the Gods scene, all the cool alien worlds they go to, just all the interesting and fascinating things. There is so much creativity in this movie, and I really, really like all the attention to detail they put into it. But it just doesn't have that same explosion of cut to Loki in Asgard, cut to Odin dying, cut to Hela, goddess of death, Ragnarok time, baby, woo! It's just not as much of a party, if that makes sense. Like, it wants to be this really bombastic thing at the beginning, but it's just off. And I'm not really sure I liked Korg's narration. Like, he kept popping up. I liked his, like, opening bit with the first two. I didn't like how it kept popping up midway through, like, and this is a story of how Jane and Thor's relationship fell through. It's like, you could just have, like, flashbacks. I don't really think you needed that setup device. It was an interesting intro device. I just don't think it was a good overall, throughout the entire review, setup device. Which is unfortunate. But, that's a personal opinion, and there are definitely people who could like the other one. In addition to that, I liked a lot of the alien god designs. We saw one of Korg's gods. He's just like, hey man, all great. Zeus, as usual, is very delightfully hateable, like I said. He should be. He's an asshole. A theatrical, electrified asshole, but an asshole nonetheless. And, that's basically it. Thor Love and Thunder, I will give it 7.5 out of 10. It's not the explosive 9 that is Ragnarok. It's not Avengers Infinity War. It's not all these. You know what? I'll bump that up to an 8. I'm saying it out loud. This is going off script. I will bump this up to an 8. I had a good enough time to give this an 8. I cannot give it a 9. And Thor Ragnarok is solidly a 9. It is one of my favorite movies. It is so much fun. It's close. It's almost there, but it is not quite. So, with all that said and done, we have all the non-spoiler section out of the way. If you have not seen this movie yet, please put this down because I'm going to spoil the hell out of the ending almost immediately. Don't put me down forever. Put me down. Go see this movie. Because yes, you should go see it if you want to see it. If you watch MCU stuff still, go see this. And if you're interested in the Thor movies, go see this. It does not have a lot of connection to the other movies, so you're free to go see it without needing knowledge of previous things, which is cool. All you need is Infinity War and Endgame. You got yourself this movie. So, let's get down to it. It is spoiler section. 3, 2, 1. Jane Foster dies. And I need to talk about this immediately because if you're hearing this and you haven't seen the movie, you need context before you rage. Now, when I went into this movie, I actually, unlike most times I review comic book-based stuff, have a firm understanding of what this is about. See, I don't read a lot of comics, but occasionally, if a story idea, piques my interest, I will check it out. And I was reading the Loki comics when I got some references to the Jane Foster thing. I was really into the run where Loki was sort of like more of an anti-hero for a while, the Kid Loki stuff, and I was really just into Loki comics a lot at one point. And I kind of heard about the Jane Foster Thor story. I'm like, oh, she has cancer, but whenever she uses the hammer, the cancer goes away. But whenever she puts it down, it turns out it was using all her mortal energy to fuel the hammer. And as long as she's an Asgardian, it's fine, as long as she's a god. But the moment she stops being Thor, and she starts being human, the cancer has actually gotten worse. So she has to balance, her life versus that. Like, which life will she choose? Can she even stay Thor forever? That kind of thing. And it's an interesting thing, and I like how they adapted here. I will say that. This is probably the best way you could adapt it, but I do want to mention, I think this storyline would have been better as a TV series. And I'm going to say why right now. The whole movie has to essentially disregard the fact that the cancer goes away or is essentially not affecting her. It's still affecting her, but it's slowed its progress, but whenever she puts it down, she feels its progress all over again. Essentially, she's not fighting the cancer, but she gets a temporary reprieve where it slows down inside her body. But it's still raging just as bad, and the second she puts down the hammer or can't use the power anymore, it's eating up all her energy, and her body goes into shock and isn't able to fight the cancer, and the cancer gets worse immediately after she puts it down. In keeping with the movies. However, we only get 4 scenes with this, and we only get a few scenes to her cancer beforehand, and that's because of the time constraints of this movie and the fact that they wanted Thor and Jane in the movie where she and her cancer problem were introduced. Now, I like this. I think Thor should be interacting with her, but I do believe that a full 6 or 8 episode miniseries, or maybe even a full 10 episode full series on Disney Plus could have explored the cancer dynamic better than simply throughout a single movie. Now, granted, she's been dealing with this cancer for a few months on the side, and we see that. But it would have been nice to have had her struggling through this, slowly gaining her powers like in the comics. But they handled it very well. However, the main thing I knew was that she was probably going to die in this movie. And you might be wondering, did she die in the comics? I don't remember. I genuinely don't. I'm going to look it up. 1 second. I had the page open. I didn't check yet. So looking here, no. She was magically cured by Thor. But I was nearly positive for the movie, unlike comics, which can run forever, they were going to kill her. And it struck me this was an inevitability. And I was kind of dreading it because they built her up as a really cool character. She has a good relationship with Valkyrie. Her and Thor essentially decide to try their relationship again. Not as like the relationship they used to have, but understanding where they went wrong. They both pushed each other away. You know, Jane dove headfirst into her work, as did Thor, and they sort of ended up pushing each other away. And then when Thor was gone for months, and Jane eventually just had it and left him a note saying, I'm done. And you know what? That's sad. It's upsetting. It's not great. But I understand why they ruined the relationship. And guess what? They have good chemistry together. I like this sort of like awkward, you're Thor. They have this whole thing where their weapons are almost like their new boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, Thor is like, my hammer. It's like, and then and then he tries to call the hammer to him, but it's bonded to Jane now. And so his axe shows up and it's like, you called? It's like, oh, no, I was calling you. Not the hammer. The hammer is just an axe, you know? And it's just like this little micro joke. It's very interesting, very fun. They play off each other well. Honestly, Jane Foster was one of the better, early stage girlfriends, personally. Peggy Carter and her were two of my favorites. Pepper Potts is nice, but she doesn't do a ton. Like, she's nice. She's good. And yeah, she deserved to stay till the end. But, like, I actually really liked Jane Foster in the movie she was in, the first movie. Then Dark World came along and she just got destroyed. I mean, in the first movie, she was actually kind of cool. She was this astrophysicist studying temporal spatial anomalies. She published a whole book. She did a lot of stuff. Like, her work with Thor essentially revolutionized astrophysics. Like, she's a really well-respected scientist, which is really cool, personally. But they weren't gonna let her live because it's just not narratively satisfying. See, basically, once you give someone cancer, you can't really undo it. Now, there are cheats for this. Like I said, magic is a solution. They did that in the comics. But it feels half-hearted. You know, it feels like, why? Like, what? Aren't you removing the conflict here? Like, you're just, like, having an outside character remove the conflict. Like, why'd you even bother? Apparently you can just undo cancer. And it's not like they gave her low-level cancer. Like, they make it very clear very early on in this movie, because I thought they were just going to give her, like, early-stage cancer and say, okay, maybe she can undergo intensive treatment, stop being Thor for a while, and then become Thor when she's better. But they gave her stage 4 cancer right out the back, and they make it very clear that we discovered at stage 4. It has progressed basically unimpeded this whole time. And then she contacts her doctor friends, like all of your friends have reviewed Jane. I'm so sorry. If you need any help getting through this time, we are here for you, but does not look like any of the treatments are working. Like they make it very clear, like the first 30 minutes of this movie, Jane Foster is essentially on a clock. And being Thor, while allowing her to operate like a normal person, also makes it so her treatments don't work. So it technically extends her time, but it's also destroying the effects of the only other thing that extends her time. And also I want to bring up some other interesting things right here. The main thing Jane feels, she feels this like pull towards some Norse books when she's moping a lot. She's like, why? I have all these things I need to do. And she's drawn over to these Norse books while searching for a cure by this whispering voice, and we know it's Mjolnir. And the book she's into describes Mjolnir as a symbol of vitality and strength and health, which, fascinatingly enough, it was. It is believed that the symbol of Mjolnir, oftentimes as a necklace, was worn sort of like a talisman to grant, essentially hope to grant the user increased health and vitality, essentially a boon from the amulet. As an item in mythology, it represented strength, health, vitality, essentially a well-lived life. And it's very interesting that Jane would think, obviously Jane, who ended up mixing her scientific approach with myths, would seek out an item that called to her that had those kind of rumors attached to it. And like I said, the hammer, while devouring some of her energy to do so, does make her healthy enough to act as a freaking superhuman god. Like, it makes it very clear by the end of the movie, when she's a Thor, she has essentially become a god temporarily. The hammer essentially allows her to act as a human-born demigod. And that's why, at the end of the movie, they have the confrontation with Thor. And basically, they got their asses kicked. Valkyrie, Jane, and Thor get their asses kicked by Gor. And Gor ends up stealing his axe to go get to the center of the universe, make a wish on eternity to kill all gods. Jane obviously reveals at this point she is, had revealed earlier she had cancer, and Thor is not seeing just how far it went because she lost her power. She had basically powered down after they all get their asses kicked. What this means is, she's in a bad shape. She's like in a hospital bed. It's made very clear, Jane, if you do not sit here and get your treatments and stop using that thing for at least for a few weeks, you will not live the next time you use it. If you use it again without treatments taking hold, you will die. But she, knows that Thor can't be on his own. And after he leaves, she essentially senses that he's not having a good time and decides, I have to. So she takes up the hammer. And when she comes there, there's this moment where Thor just looks at her. It's like, he doesn't start sobbing immediately. He's like, no, we have a mission. We have to do this. I have to make her sacrifice or something. Because Jane makes the heroic sacrifice in this movie. And I really like that Jane makes the heroic sacrifice of her own decision, based on her desires, her duty. She wanted to do more for the world. It's why she's done all this stuff. And by doing this, by saving these gods, by saving these children, she is doing something for the world. And she feels like she wants to do this. This isn't something she's doing just because the plot demands it. This is an evolution of her character arc of trying to advance different scientific fields to save the world. Now she's, beating up a supervillain to do it. Even at the cost of her life. And the thing is, she makes this decision knowing full well that she will die. And knowing that she will probably live if she doesn't. Because Asgard is there for her now. There are probably ways she could have gotten help. She could have gone to Doctor Strange. The superhero, if Thor died fighting Gor the God Butcher to save the universe, and, he managed to save him, even if he didn't, the superhero community after this point, because Valkyrie wasn't going to stay quiet about it anymore. Probably not. She's already been seen so much. She's been all over the place. There are people who could have helped her. Maybe. At least given her a chance. She would have had a chance to live. But she recognizes that this wasn't a way to live. She didn't want to live slowly dying in a bed. Even if it extended her life by years, she did not want to live like that. She wanted to go out, do something meaningful, make a difference, even if it meant her death. And that's heroic art. You don't see that a lot in love interest in shows. Hell, even Pepper Potts, the only girlfriend from stage 1 that stuck around, did not get anywhere near that kind of thing. Which is really cool. I like that they've given Jane an actual freaking character built upon her character in Thor 1 and not the plot device she was in Thor 2. I do dislike Thor 2 a lot. I think it's mostly an average movie, but I really dislike the way they handled Jane. And that scene is touching because it doesn't have Thor immediately start losing focus on the battle. He's a warrior. He's lost people. He's lost a lot of people at this point. And he knows at this point that you have to make their sacrifices mean something if people are going to die around you. And yeah, he looks under despair, but the moment he's done with that, he turns right back to the fight and is like, all right, now I really have to kick your ass because quite frankly, this is the last time I'm going to kick ass with my girlfriend. And now I got to show her that I still can do what I do. And it is a good fight. I like the fight with Gor. And Jane Foster does die at the end. She dies from her cancer. In the center of the universe with Eternity, nearby. Gor has actually gone there first, so he gets a wish on Eternity. Basically, Eternity had a riddle for her gods. Any being who got to the center of the universe, first and met him would be able to grant a wish. Thor, the Bifrost, the portable axe with the Bifrost in it was just the thing he needed to open the final door, which is why the other gods weren't worried because they thought he didn't have a key, which, he got from Thor. And he got in there just a few minutes before they would have been able to stop him or get in there first, so he gets a wish for eternity. Really good scene, I like it. I kind of like what they were going for. I'm not sure they entirely nailed the thing with Gor. It's a little too flippy at the end, maybe a little too fairy tale-ish for me. But I do like the ending they gave Jane. Basically, Thor just is like, you have your wish. There's nothing I can do to stop you. Eternity is the god of gods. I can't beat him. He's essentially omnipotent. For those of you who don't know, Eternity is essentially the creator of the Marvel universe, one of the top dogs. So you can't really do anything to stop him. Gor can make the wish to kill them all whenever he wants, and he's like, I can't win anymore. But I will spend these last few moments with Jane because she has deserved my attention. Because I am not an uncaring asshole to God. because I care about people. And it's just like, it's again a refuting of everything Gor stands for as an antagonist, which, you know, is one of the reasons he gets under Gor's skin so much. And she dies, but she died as Thor to an extent. And so when she dies, she turns into all those particles like Odin, and in the end credit scene, she's seen materializing inside Valhalla and meeting Heimdall. And I just found out how they're going to bring her back, because the next movie is definitely going to involve Heimdall. And yes, there is definitely going to be a next movie of this, and I'm getting to the fun bit. Okay, so we already went over Gor the God Butcher earlier. How he's, you know, the god killer, he thinks gods are assholes, there's a personal beef with Thor because of the way he acts, and he's really good at manipulating the few gods that do sort of care about their people. He has that air of, like, I want to see you abandon them, but I also know you're going to play it up for long enough that I can take advantage. But he's, you know, a little uncertain about Thor's actions. We also get to see Heimdall's kid trying to use his powers to summon Thor there every once in a while to keep the kids calm and confident that they're going to be okay. At the end, Thor gives a bit of his powers to all the kids so they can get past the monsters. And the second he gets all that axe, he throws it to Heimdall's kid Axel and is just like, teleport them home! Now! All the kids, home! I need to fight the bad guy. I kind of like the final battle is not like having a final battle with the shadow demons. It's literally just, kids, here's lightning for a bit so the shadow demons can't hurt you. Now, I'm going to get the axe, and the second I get it, you are all to leave this place right now, because I don't care if most of you are Asgardians. This is not a safe place for children. I just love that moment where, like, Thor's like, you're warriors! It's like, no, we're not. It's like, well, you're Asgardians. It's like, well, actually, not all of us are Asgardians. Some of us are, like, just, like, a werewolf alien. It's just like, okay. You're all Asgardians in spirit, and here's a bit of my lightning, because, yeah, you kids definitely need some safety gear. It's just this, I just love the comedy in this movie. The comedy is still on point. And Gor's upset mostly because of the loss of his daughter. He actually even feels like, you know, not full on nihilism where it's just like, I'm glad my daughter died if she didn't have to live in a world ruled by cruel gods. When he finally gets to eternity, he's ready to wish all gods dead, because it's a lot more effective than going around stabbing them one by one. And he's a little taken aback by the way Thor is just like, I can't beat you anymore, so I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to sit down with the woman I love, and I'm going to spend my last few moments with her. Which, it kind of spits in the face of everything Gor knew, because any other god in this situation would be begging or pleading. He wanted that. He wanted to see them brought low. He wanted to see them beg him. You know? It's why he made it so Thor would probably catch up to him. He didn't just want Thor to lose. He wanted a god to do what he did all those years ago, to sit down before a being that could destroy them with a thought and beg them and ask them, why are you going to ruin my life? He wanted to make a god him. He wanted to inflict that same hurt before destroying them as his gods had destroyed his world, all for their own benefit. And it's in that moment that he kind of comes to realize that what's he doing. And Thor basically tears him down and says, you really just wanted your daughter back. You have the chance to do it. You can wish her back to life. This is a one use only, anything goes reality warping wish. You can bring your daughter back. He could probably have even done it while killing all the gods. And in the end, yeah, he cared more about his daughter than that, but he was scared since, so the way the Necrosword works is it essentially curses the user. And that Thor and Jane destroyed the sword during the fight. Which means that he's dying. And he doesn't want to bring his daughter back in a world where he's dying. But he does it anyway, and he actually asks Thor, will you bring her back? And the interesting thing is, he does it, he brings his daughter back because he also saw that Thor was a god who cared. He saw Thor essentially bucked his trends of what gods would be. Because, remember, he thought, and kind of rightly so, based on what we saw in the, like, Omnipoton, or whatever it's called, the Pantheon of Pantheons building, where it's like all the gods hang out. The gods are essentially callous assholes who would easily let the entire universe burn if it meant they got to live and still be all-powerful. And he's right about that. But Thor bucks his trend, and essentially he goes from wanting all gods dead to wanting the gods to be better. So he doesn't just bring his daughter back. He decides that my daughter was the sweet, pure innocence of this world. I'm going to make sure she's the god that this universe needs. And so he basically says, he basically brings her back with the power of eternity on her side. She's essentially a new top dog god in waiting. And he asks Thor to raise her and teach her to be a good god who watches out for those who care, who goes from world to world and actually protects people, essentially. Basically, he thought the ideal he once believed in was destroyed, that it could never existed. Now he understands that those were false claims to the ideal, and he wants his daughter to essentially be better than the heroes that he ended up meeting. Now, there's even a whole line that essentially kind of almost spells it out where Thor essentially meets Zeus, who he modeled a lot of himself after, or at least the, idealized version. And then he immediately is like, the first thing on Zeus's list, which is so myth-appropriate. This is the line that sent me in stitches, because it's just so mythologically accurate that I couldn't believe it. Basically, Zeus has this big old introduction. He does this big intro scene, going all over the place, throwing his lightning bolts everywhere. He's like, all right, everyone. I'm glad to see so many of you have retreated here at me to our secret clubhouse for gods. Now, our first item on the agenda. And Thor's like, oh, they're gonna be talking about Gor, right? He's killed like hundreds of gods. They have to be talking about. He's an awesome guy. It's like, we need to determine who we're going to be inviting to the yearly orgy. And there's just an immediate moment of Jane looking at Thor. It's like, this is your hero? It's like, this is not the guy I thought he was. Like, I do like it too how Thor's not like defending him either. He's just immediately like, oh shit, I should never have met him. I should never have met this hero. And, he starts talking and Zeus is like, who dares talk during my speeches? And he, brings Thor up there and Thor's like, the God Butcher is slaughtering us all. We have come here to beg for your aid. For the army of gods. It's like, oh, who cares? It's like, wait, what? It's like, yes, we don't care. He can't get here. This place is secret, hidden even from him. And he's kind of right about that from what we gathered. And don't worry. He's just killed a few minor gods and ravished a few hundred worlds. What's the big deal? And it's just like, but he's destroying everything. And it's like, don't worry. And then the other gods start getting worried. And he's just like, no, everyone, don't worry. Calm down. There's no way he's going to get to eternity. And Thor, Valkyrie, and Jane immediately just turn to, Thor and Valkyrie immediately go like, wait, what? He's looking for eternity. You mean he wants to get the free once-in-a-universe wish coupon to wish us out of existence? Probably very bloodily, like massive blood explosion style of his usual combat as anything go by. And Jane's like, wait, what? It's like, it's a free wish coupon. It's like, are they morons? The guy called the God Butcher is looking for a free wish coupon. That is not something you want to ignore. And yeah, the gods are so arrogant. They were literally just waiting to ignore everything. They just wanted to go away. And it's just that moment of, are you gods or are you freaking pathetic wastes of space? And that's when they beat up Zeus and steal this lightning bolt for a new weapon to use against Gor the God Butcher. Because they didn't get an army out of this trip, so they gotta get something. It's just a lot of fun all around. The whole god scene is just, again, it's one of those scenes I'm going to go through and pick out like a dozen times, trying to pick out every single god in one of our pantheons. Oh, it'd be so great. I did like the brief Quetzalcoatl imagery. Not sure how I feel about him looking like he does as the Aztecs showed him. I would have preferred him as like a feathered serpent. They had like this golden dragon god, so they definitely could have done a feathered serpent. I think that would have been cooler. Personally, that's just my opinion, but you can go with the Aztec look if you want to, I guess. Ugh. Everybody goes for the Aztec look. Give me the giant, flying, feathered dragon that I want. Heartstriker did it. Why can't you be more like Heartstrikers in this one specific area? Anyway, my little mini rant about Quetzalcoatl aside. Yeah, pretty cool. I love this whole scene. Love all this stuff. I've said it multiple times. And Zeus, despite getting run through with a lightning bolt, well, that's not all black the Necro sword, so it doesn't really kill him. And yeah, he's patching himself up like, people used to respect gods, Now they just look for superheroes because they go down there and actually solve their problems. It's like, yeah, they're offering a better service than you. That's how it works. That's why you don't have a lot of worshippers anymore, Zeus, because if somebody needs some rain in a drought, they're not going to pray to you. They're going to try and petition Iron Man, say, hey, this will be good for your PR. And Tony Stark will be like, yeah, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to build a rain machine. What's up, Zeus? It's just like, dude, do your job. Sorry. I have a almost irrational hate for Zeus. I almost like I enjoy seeing him get his ass kicked. A lot. So, moving on from there, yeah, that's about it. That's all I really got on this one. Fun movie, great time, awesome kick-ass soundtrack, cool effects. We got ourselves a nice mishmash of mythologies and original stuff with the rock gods and all the alien gods in the background. Really fun, would recommend. Like I said, that's basically it. So, moving on from that, we have news. Next week, I will not be streaming. I am going to be on call, and it's just a little too hard to make streaming and on call. So, on Tuesday, I'll be reviewing Stranger Things Part 2. And then on Thursday, I'm going to be reviewing The Quarry. I went ahead and moved my review of Ordinary Monsters all the way back to next Tuesday, so it'll give me time to go over through the book again, because I kind of have to divide my time with it. So, yeah. That's going to be all for the foreseeable future. See you guys next time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and thank you for listening to the Dragon's Library. Please subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes. The Dragon's Library releases new episodes Tuesday and Friday each week, and you can follow us on Twitter at dragon_library2. If you want to suggest an episode topic, my email is in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for all your support.